Mike sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone. It lay loosely in his hand, resting on his lap. On the screen was a frozen image of a video of his wife, with a small play button in the middle. He sighed deeply. His feelings crashed over him again, making him uncomfortable inside. He fought the urge to play the video again. It wasn't just about not wanting to see what was there. There was a second video, one sent by the man she was with now. Mike wished he could make things right, but he knew the true problem wasn't the other man. It was his wife. Mike felt lost. He wanted to understand what went wrong, but his feelings were too strong right now. He thought maybe he should get some advice. He could call Bernard, his lawyer. In fact, he had to call Bernie. This marriage was over. There was no way back. That was one thing he was sure of. Deep down, though, his heart wanted things to be like before she left. But she had made her choice. Mike wondered why this hurt so much. He let himself lie back on the bed they once shared and stared at the ceiling until he fell asleep. It was just after 5 in the evening. Mike woke up the next morning. His mind was clearer now. He went to the bathroom, got cleaned up, took a shower, and dressed himself without really thinking about it. His mind was busy figuring out what to do next. Part of him made plans, and the other part checked what might happen depending on different choices. The shock had faded. He called Bernie. "Hey, Bernie, yeah," Mike said. "Hey, Mike, what's going on?" Bernie asked from his office. "Lanny left me. She's moved in with another guy." "What? Wait, are you serious?" Bernie leaned forward with concern. "I need your help, man," Mike said quietly. "Oh, Mike." Bernie sighed and rubbed his forehead. "I'm sorry. Let me check my schedule. Okay. Here's how we'll start. Come to my office at 11. Bring lunch. Also, bring whatever financial papers you have, especially your tax papers. Be ready to tell me everything, and get ready for some tough questions, all right?" "Got it. I have most of it on my laptop. I'll bring copies," Mike answered. "I'm sure you have questions too," Bernie said, understanding what Mike was going through. "I do," Mike said. "All right, brother," Bernie replied. He knew Mike was already thinking carefully. Once Mike chose what to do, handling the details would be easier. If Mike was thinking about calling a real estate and family lawyer like Bernard, he had already made up his mind. "I bet you would," Bernard said with a smile. "And no taquito hell drive-through, okay?" Bernie added with a laugh. "That's hard to believe," Bernie said as he looked at Mike, who had just finished telling his story. "I got video," Mike said, chewing on his burger. "One from each of them." "Yeah, I hoped you'd have that," Bernie said, shaking his head. "But wow, that's just really dumb." Mike just shrugged. "Okay, so, divorce?" Bernie asked, reaching for his onion rings. "Oh yeah," Mike agreed. "I want to make it as painful as possible for those two." "Hold on," Bernie said, dipping an onion ring in some spicy sauce and holding it up like a pointer. "This is divorce. Divorce means fighting over money and stuff you own. Usually the more you have, the harder the fight is. If there's nothing, then there's nothing to argue about. Besides arguing about support, since you don't have kids, what's left is just maintenance money. The laws here usually say you split things fairly and then go your own way after the papers are done. There's nothing you can legally do about the guy she's spending time with, sorry." "Damn," Mike said, looking far away at the wall. "My bigger worry is how you handle things until the papers are finished," Bernie said. "It sounds like she expects you to accept her going away for a week and being with that guy like you're supposed to just forgive and forget," Bernie said, eating another onion ring. "You're not going to take that, right?" "Damn right not," Mike said, still staring at the wall. "Good," Bernie said. "But listen, most women who do this kind of thing," Bernie started, "for some reason, and I've seen a few cases, they think the marriage can be fixed or worked out after. My experience says that maybe at first things look better, but the marriage will usually fall apart and end in divorce anyway. Sometimes the woman keeps thinking she can do it again, like she got away with it once. Lots of guys do the same thing." Mike made a little laugh and looked at Bernie again. He raised his burger and took another bite. "Okay, if the money side is simple, and it might take some time to check, my job right now is to help you keep her from making things harder until she realizes you won't take her back. And believe me, some people refuse to see reason and will keep fighting way longer than they should. The whole time, the lawyer makes money," Bernie said. "What kind of trick is that?" Mike asked. He hadn't thought about something like that before. Well, many lawyers hired to handle cases like Lanny's will try to make things take a long time if she agrees. That means they will stretch out the process, making you deal with a lot of trouble. The goal is to wear you down until you finally accept what Lanny did and take her back. With those videos, that might be their only option. If they get a judge who agrees, they can make this last for years, Bernie said. It's a bad situation, and that's just one part. There's more. Mike stopped eating as he thought about what Bernie was saying. Damn, Mike muttered. Yeah, I know, Bernie sighed. But if Lanny wants it, it's likely that whoever is in charge will order couples counseling, at least at first, to see if the marriage can be fixed. How can they make me stay married if I don't want to? Mike asked angrily. That's how it works now. And believe me, for guys whose wives do things like this, Bernie shrugged, looking helpless. It's really tough to manage. If you get the wrong counselor, they can have a huge effect on what happens. Lanny's lawyer will push for a counselor who favors her side, and those people do exist. Plus, too many judges like to say they helped save a marriage. Believe me, if Lanny wants, she can make this last a long time. Mike sat quietly, thinking about what he'd just heard. Then he started eating again. Okay? Mike sighed after swallowing. I guess I need to make sure she knows I'm never going back to her after what she did. Well, first, we need to file for separation, Bernie said, typing on his laptop to find the right forms. That's easy and quick. I can get it done this afternoon, and it'll probably start tomorrow. After that, we need to... Mike left Bernie's office. As he drove back to what used to be his happy home, he thought about how to send Lanny a clear message. He was done and would never be with her again. But no idea came to him. Sitting on the back deck of the house, Mike stared out over the small yard. Most of it was taken up by a big hole they had dug. The plan was to put in a swimming pool, not a big one, but enough for short laps, which was what Lanny wanted. They had added 3 more years to the mortgage to pay for it, and now it would never be finished. As he thought about that, Mike noticed the smell of smoke in the air. Mike glanced over at his neighbor's yard. There stood Bill, good old Bill, next to a pile of leaves that was smoking. Bill held a leaf rake and watched the small fire. Nearby, Mike saw a garden hose. Looking at the sun, Mike guessed it was just after 5 in the afternoon. Burning leaves was allowed after 5. Mike watched for a few minutes since there was nothing else happening. After a while, Bill separated some leaves from the pile to keep the burn under control. Mike's eyes moved back to his own yard and the large hole there. Huh, Mike muttered. All right. He picked up his phone and called Jim as soon as it connected. Hey, Jim, what are you and your cameras doing tomorrow afternoon? Mike asked. At the same time, Mike called the municipal office. A polite voice answered, Hello? How can I help you? Hi, I wanted to ask how to get a burn permit, Mike said. The next morning, Mike woke up early and took care of some small tasks before starting his big plan. He drove to several places and talked to different people. He even spoke with his mother, who kindly said Mike could stay at her place for a while and store some things in the barn. He also hired a moving company. They were happy to hear that most of his things wouldn't be moving far, even at short notice. Mike was glad the burn permit was cheap, but some of the questions he had to answer felt annoying. Still, he was given the permit. It probably helped that Mike's house was in a spot where burning was allowed. Mike also had his old scout friend Frederick with him. Fred worked for the fire department and was supportive of the plan. Mike had wanted Fred around for more than just safety matters, but this was good too. After finishing some more chores that took longer than expected, Mike and Fred grabbed some food from a drive-thru and went back to the house. Jim arrived and joined them to eat. When the movers came, Fred was already in the hole in the backyard, making sure everything would go as planned. Jim was setting up cameras. Mike walked through the house with the movers, placing small colored stickers on different items to show where they should go. Thanks to the movers' help, things moved quickly. At 2 o'clock, Mike sent a message to everyone he knew, friends, co-workers, family, and neighbors, inviting them to the event at 5 in the evening. BYOB, he added. People started arriving around 4:30. There was a lot of curiosity, and Mike answered their questions while continuing to work with the movers. As more people arrived, the guests started sharing what was happening. Many of the men said, "Oh, wow, yeah, and yes, yes." Most of the women looked shocked, and some tried to speak up, but their male partners quieted them. One woman, who had gone through a tough divorce after finding out her wife had been unfaithful, "I didn't know she liked both men and women," actually supported what was going on. At 4:51, Mike's mother came by. She brought a pie. Brenda asked Mike as he and a mover were carrying a chest of drawers through the house. "Are you really doing this?" Mike just grunted to say yes. Brenda shook her head, thinking about how awful this situation was. But Mike had grown up in a broken home, hurt by his father's unfaithfulness, so cheating was something he felt very strongly about. Lanny knew this and understood Mike's feelings. Brenda didn't feel sorry for Lanny much, but she had still helped the new couple buy some of the furniture that was now at risk. Such a waste, she thought. Mike quickly took a shower to wash off the sweat and then joined everyone in the backyard. He asked Jim as he walked by, "Are we ready?" Jim stood next to the tripod with a camera and held a tablet. From it, he could control the 3 other cameras, as long as no one moved them. Jim smiled and gave him a thumbs up after checking the Wi-Fi connection. Mike nodded and moved to the spot where everyone could see him. More people had shown up than he expected. He didn't see his in-laws, which meant he would have to explain things to them later, something he wasn't looking forward to. He had liked his father-in-law a lot. "Jim, can we start?" Mike asked loudly as he reached the place he wanted. He looked toward Jim, the professional photographer who owed him a big favor. Jim put up one finger, chewing on a pen and frowning at something on his tablet. He typed a little, muttered a bad word quietly, then poked the tablet angrily a few times. After a moment, Jim said, "Oh, okay. We're good, Mike. We're rolling." Then he pressed another button and the cameras began recording. "Good evening, everyone," Mike said loudly to the crowd gathered in the yard and on the deck above. "We're here to send a big message to Lanny," someone shouted. "Who?" "Okay, here's why we're here," Mike went on. "Lanny, my wife, decided she wanted a little excitement before we started a family. Her little trip was to go on a tropical vacation for a week with her friend, some guy named Chad. A few people standing together on the side of the yard looked at each other surprised. They knew Lanny from work, and they knew Chad too. "Oh, wow. That's where they are," someone said quietly. "I didn't know anything about this until Lanny sent me a video after she left," Mike said loudly. "She wanted me to know that what she did was only for a short time. It didn't mean anything, and it wouldn't change things between us." Mike watched the people as they thought about this. "She is wrong," Mike said firmly. The people murmured quietly among themselves. "So, the marriage is over. I'm not going to stay with someone who isn't honest and hides things from me. I will not forgive or forget," Mike said, his voice showing anger. At the back of the porch, Mike's in-laws had just arrived. They stood there, trying to understand what they were hearing. "If anyone wants to see the video, I can give you a copy," Mike said. "I'm happy to share. I haven't spoken with Lanny since she sent it. She said she was turning off her phone until she got back to the States, so—" "What?" Lanny's mother, Beth Ann, asked her husband, confused. "But there's another video," Mike continued. "I think Lanny sent me the first one in the morning while I was working because the second video was still there after I watched the first. They didn't happen at the same time, I promise. The second video is from Chad." "What?" Beth Ann said louder this time. Lanny's father, Steve, tightened his jaw and listened carefully to Mike. "Chad's video is him showing off about being with Lanny. He hoped she wasn't too upset when she came back to me. In the video, you can see the back of Lanny's head as she sat in his lap." Beth Ann covered her mouth with her hands, her eyes wide with shock. "That sounds just like Chad," said one of Lanny's co-workers. "If anyone wants that video, just ask," Mike told them. "Now why are we here? I've heard that the divorce might not happen quickly, even though I want it to be over fast. And believe me, I want out of this mess as soon as possible. But Lanny has to agree and not fight the divorce. That's why I asked you all to come. This is to send Lanny a clear message that we're done. Finished. I want nothing to do with her except to see her on the day the divorce is final. I want her to understand that we can't work this out. That's why I'm saying this here, with everyone watching." "Fred?" Mike asked, turning to the fireman standing near the hole in the yard. The hole was filled with many items bought after the marriage, almost everything. "We're ready," Fred said. He made sure everything was safe and nothing nearby would be hurt. Mike smiled and looked back at the group. "Just so you know, I took half the value of the things here since they're covered by our insurance. I put my share in the bank account that Lanny and I share after taking out my part. Understand? I paid her for what I'm going to do." There was a low murmur from the crowd. "Oh, this is interesting," one voice said. Mike looked at Fred and nodded. Fred nodded back. Fred then opened a bottle he had nearby, holding it carefully away from himself, and tossed it into the hole. The bottle landed on the mattress at the top of the pile. Fred wanted the smaller things to be at the bottom so air could get through. A thick liquid flowed out as the bottle rolled off the mattress, slowly reaching down to the bathroom rug below. Fred bent down and picked up a metal container and opened it. "Here goes," he said quietly. He gently put it where the first bottle was. The pink fluid spilled out as the container fell into the pile. After a moment, if you looked closely, you could see a small blue flame appear on the wet spot on the mattress. Then the flame grew and moved slowly along the wet path toward the edge. The rug below also started to glow softly. It was a slow and controlled burn. After 10 minutes, the whole pile was burning brightly. Lanny's parents talked quietly with each other, asking questions they did not have answers for. Beth Ann tried calling Lanny, but got only her voicemail. Lanny's father sent several text messages quickly. Mike moved away from where he had been standing and slowly walked around the hole, watching the small fire. People started moving around, talking with each other. Some seemed more excited than others. Opinions about what was happening were many and strong, but no one spoke to Mike. He was lost in his own thoughts. "That's something, isn't it?" Mike's mother, Brenda, said from behind Lanny's parents. It wasn't a question. The parents of the now-ended marriage looked at each other. Lanny's parents looked puzzled and showed it clearly. Brenda looked determined. "I don't know what's next, but I have an idea," Brenda said. "If I were you, I'd help Lanny. This isn't what she's expecting when she comes back." Steve looked at her silently, asking without words. "Yes, I've been through something similar. I can guess what's coming," Brenda said. "If she's like my husband, she's going to say she knew Mike would be upset by what she did, but she hoped their love would get through it. That she feels this was a mistake, but it had to happen. She said it didn't mean anything compared to their love. She was sure he loved her enough to look past her going away for a rough week with whoever this Chad was. That's all just wishful thinking," she said calmly, like she was explaining something she was tired of hearing. She hoped. That's what she means. She hoped he would love her enough. Like that would make everything okay. It's not okay, not even close, and it never has been. She'll say she knew she had to do something to make up for what she did, but that something will never go beyond a little kindness or some extra care for a short time. It's never enough. Mike will never understand why she did it. He'll be upset with her for a long time. He trusted her a lot and she let him down. How much he loved her doesn't matter. All he can see is that his love was thrown away like it meant nothing, and all he got was a note in the mail. She sighed. Your daughter probably doesn't know how hard things will be when she comes back, but I don't think she expected this. If she had, I hope she would have been stronger and not given in. She's going to struggle. But if you want to help her, she nodded toward the families nearby, people she used to see at celebrations and family gatherings, usually with their kids around. You'll have to make her understand one thing. Mike will never have anything good to say about her. She's poison to him right now. He's going to be angry for a long time. Asking him to forgive her? Maybe think about that after many years. She needs to let go. She shouldn't hold on to the pain. If she lets go, the hurt won't be as bad. She looked toward the bonfire outside. That's Mike's message, she said. She hurt him deeply, so now he's burning everything else too. The bridge between them is gone. No. Beth Ann kept whispering, No, while Steve quietly accepted the hard truth. Outside, Mike had just finished sending videos of his wife and Chad to her co-workers. He accepted the few sorries they gave him quietly. Mike, it's time to start cleaning things up, Fred said as Mike paced around the fire. Okay, I still have a few things to throw in, Mike said. He went to a small pile near the house and dirt hole. He pulled out a large framed picture of him and Lanny on their honeymoon, both smiling and laughing in it. Mike held the photo up to the camera and then threw it into the fire like a frisbee with one hand. It made a sharp "fweet" sound as it burned. He called over one of the movers who were enjoying themselves nearby. Together they tossed a big couch, the snuggle couch, that Lanny had insisted on getting, into the flames. After that came a set of smooth bed sheets. The last thing was a box. It was about 2 feet wide, 4 feet tall, and 6 inches deep. The box had pink and yellow designs on white. Mike took the box and looked at it for a moment. Then he used his fingers to lift the lid and pulled it off. He dropped the lid on the ground and reached inside. When he pulled his hand out, he was holding a white dress. The dress unfolded gently as it hung from his hand. It was the wedding dress he had bought for Lanny. He didn't look away from the dress as he walked, his steps heavy toward the edge of the fire. He stopped there and looked back and forth between the wedding dress, the gift he had planned to give Lanny's family, and the burning pile of their belongings. His mind filled with memories. It felt like he was sending those memories away, just like the dress. He threw the dress into the fire with the other things that had been part of their life together. Then Mike turned and looked straight at one of the cameras. He stared into the lens for a few seconds, then turned and walked away quietly. After Fred said the fire was out and Jim finished packing the cameras, Mike thanked everyone many times. The helpers joined in and threw water and dirt over the last of the fire. "I'm going to go with the helpers and put away the things I'm keeping at my mom's," Mike explained. "The things from before the marriage are staying here." "I'll edit the video over the next few days," Jim said. "You don't do things halfway, do you?" Mike joked. Jim nodded. "Anything worth doing is worth doing well, right?" Mike shrugged. "Besides, forget counseling." Just then, Lanny's mother called out as Mike came inside. "Mike?" "Oh, hey," Mike said. His strong feelings were softer now. He looked at the two people in front of him and thought maybe his actions had hurt them more than he expected. "Was all that really needed?" she asked quietly. Mike thought for a moment. Maybe it was louder than it had to be, but after what Lanny did, I wanted to make sure it was clear. "It's over." Lanny's father looked away, speaking to no one. Beth Ann quietly wiped tears from her face. "To you, I'm sorry," Mike said, lowering his gaze. "You said you have video?" her father asked. "Yeah, I do," Mike answered after a pause. "One shows Lanny explaining her side to me. The other is about her partner." "I understand," the man said, sounding calm. "Can you send them to me?" Mike hesitated. "I'm not sure that's a good idea." "Mike, I know this will be hard," Steve said with regret. But I need to see them. For both of us," the tired father said to his wife as he finished explaining. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Mostly," he replied. "Okay." Lanny pulled her fancy suitcase up the concrete driveway. The plastic wheels made loud noises in the quiet afternoon. Her skin was warm and golden from the sunshine during her flight home. She had practiced what she wanted to say for 6 hours while flying over the ocean. She said to herself, again and again, "I made a big mistake, Mike. It was a moment when I wasn't thinking. It meant nothing. Let's try to fix this." She thought he would cry. She expected him to shout, ask questions, or walk around angry while she sat quietly and listened until he finally said she could stay. She knew how to handle Mike. He cared deeply and stayed loyal no matter what. Lanny put her key in the front door lock and turned it. The lock didn't move. She frowned and tried again. The door did not open. A small feeling of worry crept up her neck. She looked over at the neighbor's yard. Bill was standing by his garden hose, watering flowers. But instead of smiling or waving, he looked at her with cold eyes and clear dislike. "Mike?" she called, leaving the front door and walking around the house toward the back. For the past 2 days, none of her work friends had replied to her messages. She thought maybe the phone network was bad. Before she turned the corner to the backyard, a sharp, strange smell hit her nose. It smelled like something had burned and chemicals mixed with melted plastic. Lanny stopped at the edge of the yard. Where their new pool was supposed to be, there was a large black hole in the ground. It was wet and full of ash. The old mattress springs were twisted and poking out from the wet dirt. The burnt frame of her favorite couch was half buried in the center. Her breath caught. Her hands shook as she took out her phone. A cold feeling settled deep in her stomach. She called Mike's number with trembling fingers. The phone rang twice. "Mike?" "No," a dry and tired voice said. "This is Bernie." Lanny blinked, staring at the burned ruins. "Why do you have my husband's phone?" she asked. "I don't," Bernie answered. "He sent your number to my work phone." "You cannot come back here, Lanny. You are not allowed on the property anymore. The locks have been changed. The divorce papers were filed 3 days ago." "Separation?" Lanny's voice went higher, surprised and upset. "You can't do that. I live there. My things are in the house." "Half the value of the house was put in your bank account the day the fire happened," Bernie said, without any feeling in his voice. "The rest of the property is outside. You should find another place to stay. Do not try to contact my client again. All talks must go through me." The line went silent. Lanny put down the phone. She stared at the burnt remains of her living room furniture, then looked to where her wedding dress used to be. The fear she felt quickly turned into a fierce anger. How could he do this and not even face her? She quickly searched her phone and called. "Babe?" Chad's voice came over loud gym music. "Thought you were going to have a sad reunion." "He locked me out," Lanny said quietly, staring at the charred space. "He burned everything. Chad, he's not going to be fair. We have to stop him." The porch light was off at her parents' house. Lanny pressed the bell a third time, her heavy suitcase beside her. She had hoped to be inside by now, sitting on their floral couch with a cup of tea, and her mother telling her everything would be okay. The door's deadbolt clicked. The wooden door opened a little, but the screen door stayed closed. Steve was there, looking much older than last week. His face was pale, the lines by his mouth tight. "Dad," Lanny said, stepping closer. "Thank God. Mike lost his mind. He burned my things, locked me out. Please, you need to let me in." "I saw the video, Lanny," Steve said. His voice had no anger, just emptiness. Lanny stopped. She felt like the air was gone from her lungs. "What video?" she whispered. "The one your boyfriend made. The one Mike showed me while your life was falling apart." Steve looked at her as if trying to find the daughter he used to know. "You let him record it. You sent Mike a message that said it didn't matter while that man sent him another one." "No," Lanny said, her face going pale. "Chad didn't. Mike is wrong, Dad. It's all a mix-up. Please, just let me in. I need to explain." Steve reached behind the door frame. He pushed the screen open enough to slip a worn blue bag onto the porch. "These are your college clothes. You left them in the attic," Steve said. "Your mother can't even look at the door. She's been crying since this started. You've brought shame to yourself and this family." "Dad, you can't do this. I have no place to go. My money is frozen until the divorce is done." "You have a boyfriend," Steve said, closing the door. The deadbolt clicked shut with a solid sound. 2 hours later, Lanny pulled her bags up 3 flights of stairs to Chad's apartment. He opened the door holding a protein drink. The apartment smelled stale and worn. Clothes were piled on a futon, and empty energy drink cans were scattered on the coffee table. There were no fancy counters or big windows. The rich businessman image he showed online stopped at his front door. "Rough night?" Chad asked, barely looking at her as she dropped her bags on the worn carpet. Before she could answer, his phone buzzed. He checked the screen, eyebrows lifting in surprise. "Yeah, this is Chad," he said, turning away and walking toward the small kitchen. He listened for a moment. "A gossip blogger?" "Yeah, I know who you are. The bonfire husband thing? Yeah, that's me." Chad glanced back at Lanny, who stood quietly among his messy clothes. A slow smile spread across his face. "Oh, I have a lot to say about it," he told the phone. "When do we go live?" Kendra Hale's office was on the top floor of a tall glass building downtown. It smelled like expensive leather and strong ambition. Kendra sat behind a large wooden desk, tapping a gold pen on a notepad as she looked at Lanny and Chad. "Let me be clear," Kendra said in a sharp, practiced voice. "I don't care who was with who. Cheating happens all the time in this city. What matters is the bonfire." Lanny wiped her eyes with a tissue, using the angle she knew well. "He left me with nothing, Kendra. It was an act of cruelty. I can't sleep. I'm shaken." "Good," Kendra said flatly. "Pain can work in our favor. The police won't charge him for burning his own things on his own property with a permit. But the civil court is a different matter. We are filing a case for intentional infliction of emotional distress." Chad leaned forward, arms crossed. "How much is that worth?" "Enough," Kendra said. "We are going to say he controlled Lanny in a harsh, unfair way. That helps us to break the prenuptial agreement." "He put half the value of the burned things in my bank account," Lanny said slowly. "Will that hurt our case?" "It doesn't matter," Kendra said sharply. "This is not about the cost of a couch or a wedding dress. It's about shame and emotional harm. We're going for a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. We want the house, his business, and long-term support payments. He will settle to avoid the fight, or we will keep pushing until it destroys him." Across town, Mike sat in Bernie's office. A thick pile of printed legal papers sat on the desk between them. "They're not just fighting the divorce, Mike," Bernie said, pinching his nose with frustration. "She hired Kendra Hale. Hale works only if she wins. She's tough. They're suing you for emotional harm." Mike looked at the papers, his face showing no feeling. "She cheated on me, I burned some old furniture, and now she's suing me for emotional damage?" "They're attacking the prenup," Bernie said, tapping the paper. "They're trying to make the fire look like a crazy and violent act. They want everything, and your business, your savings, the house." Mike didn't react. "Can they win?" Civil court is about who tells the better story, Bernie said, leaning back. Right now, Hale is getting a subpoena ready. They want all your electronic devices, your texts, emails, search history. They hope to find anything to make you look like a controlling, dangerous man. I have nothing to hide, Mike said softly. That doesn't matter, Bernie said. They don't need you to be guilty. They just need you to seem dangerous. Whispers started the moment Mike stepped out of the elevator. The marketing floor was usually full of noise. People talking, phones ringing. Today, everything went silent as Mike walked through the room. People quickly looked away, busy pretending to focus on their screens. A few stole nervous glances at him. He ignored them and walked calmly to his desk. Mike, his boss David called from the doorway of the corner office. In here, now. Mike dropped his briefcase and went inside. David closed the blinds and sat down heavily. Is it true? David asked, pushing his laptop across the desk. On the screen was a news article from a well-known site. The headline read, "Local husband burns wife's belongings in unfair rage." Below was a carefully edited quote from Kendra Hale about a campaign of terror and psychological abuse. The cheating wasn't mentioned. The deposit wasn't mentioned. It was a well-planned attack. I burned my own property, Mike said flatly. It was safe, allowed by law, and done by a professional. It makes you look crazy, Mike, David said, rubbing his face. HR is panicking. People say they don't feel safe working near you. This looks bad for the company. Looks don't change the truth. The truth doesn't keep our clients, David replied sharply. Look, I need you to take some time off, unpaid, just until this mess with your divorce settles. I can't have this drama here. Mike stared at him. The unfairness burned inside, but he stayed calm. His quiet strength, what kept him steady, was being used against him to make him seem cold and heartless. Fine, Mike said. He left the building 10 minutes later, carrying a box of his things. Sitting in his truck in the parking garage, the quiet felt heavy around him. He was completely alone. His phone buzzed inside his pocket. It was his mother. Mike, Brenda said, her voice full of worry. Mom, what's wrong? There are 2 vans parked at the end of my driveway, she said. Some people with cameras are walking across the lawn. They're shouting questions about you and Lanny. Mike held the steering wheel tightly until his knuckles turned white. Lock the doors, I'm coming. Bernie's meeting room looked like a computer center. Wires covered the shiny wooden table, hooked up to a strong, special laptop and several extra drives. Elias Thorne sat behind the screen. He was a digital expert, wearing an old band t-shirt and looked very tired, like he hadn't slept in days. But his fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. The police will get the search warrant by the end of today, Bernie said, walking back and forth. Elias is making a fully legal protected copy of your phone. It will include everything, even deleted messages and location points. Why? Mike asked, giving his phone to Elias. Because Kendra Hale will say you changed the evidence, Elias said without looking up, plugging Mike's phone into a special slot. We need a copy that no one can question. When the police take your phone, we lose the chance to see the original data. A progress bar on the screen quickly reached 100%. Elias clicked through complicated folders, his eyes moving fast across lines of code. Then he suddenly stopped. Look at this, he said, leaning closer to the screen. What? Mike asked. The second video, the private one Chad sent you, Elias said, pointing with a pen. The file details don't match. How? Bernie stopped walking. When you record a video on your phone, it stores camera details like light settings, frame speed, exact size, and exact times, Elias said, showing a block of text. This file has none of that. It was cleaned out. That video wasn't recorded on the phone that sent it. It was downloaded from an online server, then sent. Mike frowned, thinking it over. What does that mean? It means Chad didn't just shoot the video and send it right away, Bernie said, voice low. He got it ready before. He arranged it. Elias unplugged the phone and slid it back to Mike. You're holding something dangerous here. Chad is playing a serious game, and he's using your wife to do it. Bernie sat down hard, looking Mike in the eye with a serious face. Listen carefully. That private video must stay secret. You sent the first video to her work friends. That's okay. But if the second one ever gets out, it won't just cause trouble. You could face serious legal trouble. Kendra Hale wanted nothing more than to have control over the situation. We have to keep this quiet, she said. I won't share it, Mike said firmly. I know, Bernie replied. But we have to hope no one else does either. The room where the court had ordered them to talk felt heavy and tense. Lanny sat across the long table. She wore a big beige sweater. She looked small, weak, and very scared. It was clear she was putting on a show. Chad wasn't allowed in the room, but you could tell he was there in her mind because she kept nervously glancing at her phone under the table. Kendra Hale dropped a thick folder onto the table. "My client is ready to drop the case today," Kendra said, leaning forward like she was ready to attack. "In return, she keeps 80% of the things they own together, the house, and $5,000 a month for support forever." Bernie gave a cold, bitter laugh. "You're crazy." "Your client made her life a nightmare," Kendra said, pointing at Mike. "He embarrassed her in front of everyone in the neighborhood. He ruined her things. He's already lost his job because of how unstable he's been. A judge will see the damage and give us everything. Take the deal." Kendra looked at Mike, waiting. She wanted him to lose his temper, to yell or slam his hand on the table, to prove her story was true. But Mike stayed calm. He didn't look at Kendra. He looked at Lanny instead. Lanny shifted, uncomfortable. She thought he would be angry, but his eyes were empty. There was no anger, no love, just emptiness. He wasn't thinking about making a deal. "I gave you your half of our things," Mike said quietly. "I started the separation. I won't pay for you to be with someone else." "Mike, please," Lanny begged softly, trying to sound weak and hopeful. "Just let this end. You've hurt me enough." "I won't give you a cent," Mike said. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Lanny swallowed hard. For the first time since all this started, real fear grew inside her. Her plan wasn't working. Mike wasn't following the story she wanted him to, and he wasn't breaking under the pressure. "Mediation is done," Bernie said, standing and closing his briefcase sharply. "See you in court, Hale." Out in the lobby, Chad sat back in a leather chair, not paying attention to the tense lawyers leaving the room. He looked at his phone, smiling a little. He checked one last time the post he was about to send, studying the video attached. Then he pressed send. Mike was at his kitchen sink pouring a glass of water when his second phone started to buzz. Then again, and again. Within 10 seconds, the phone was shaking non-stop on the granite counter, lighting up with many notifications, calls, texts, and social media alerts. He put down his glass and picked up the phone. It was a message from Fred. "Mike, please tell me you didn't do this. There was a link from a big gossip website called The Viper's Den." Mike clicked it. His stomach sank. It was the second video. The secret footage of Chad and Lanny. It was playing again and again right at the top of the site. The title said, "Scorned Husband Drops the Ultimate Revenge Video." Below, the number of views kept rising fast. 50,000, 100,000, 500,000. The internet had taken the story and made it explode. Across town, Lanny was yelling loudly. She stood in the middle of Chad's apartment, staring at her laptop, shocked and scared. Her face and her shame were all over the internet. People were flooding her social media with nasty comments, talking about her and her mistakes like everyone was watching. "Take it down!" she shouted, throwing her phone at the wall. It broke against the wall. "Chad, do something!" "I can't take it down, babe. I didn't put it there," Chad shouted back, holding her shoulders. "It's Mike. He's trying to hurt us." "My life is ruined!" Lanny cried and fell to the floor, crying hard. Her job, her name, her family, everything felt lost forever. Chad grabbed his phone and called Kendra Hale. "Did you see it?" Chad asked. "I did," Kendra said, her voice cold and angry. "Mike just gave us a big problem." "What do we do now?" "I'm calling the police," Kendra said. "Sharing private videos without permission is a serious crime here. He will face the law." Mike stood still in his quiet kitchen, staring at the phone. He knew he hadn't shared the video. Bernie knew it too. But people didn't care about truth. They wanted someone to blame. And he was the easiest target. Outside the kitchen window, distant police sirens started to sound. Mike put his phone in his pocket. He didn't run. He calmly walked to the front door, unlocked it, and waited. The sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights cut through the night on the quiet street. 2 police cars blocked Mike's driveway, their spotlights shining across the lawn. 4 officers walked out with their hands near their belts. Bill, the neighbor, stood on his porch in his robe, watching with a slight smile as the police moved toward Mike's open door. "Michael Brady?" the lead officer asked. "Yes," Mike said softly, stepping outside. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back." The cold metal handcuffs pressed into Mike's wrists. He didn't try to fight as they searched him, took the backup phone from his pocket and read his rights. The shame was deep. They walked him down his own driveway, pushed him into the locked back seat of a police car, and drove off with neighbors watching silently. The holding cell smelled bad. Sweat, bleach, and something sour. Mike sat on a hard metal bench, surrounded by men either resting or pacing nervously. Time crawled slowly through the long, lonely night. For the first time, real fear mixed with his anger. If Kendra Hale won, he wouldn't just lose his house, he could lose his freedom. He might end up with a terrible label that would ruin everything he worked for. The heavy steel door opened at 8 in the morning. "Brady," a guard called out. "You're bonded out?" Bernie waited in the dull, bright lobby, looking very tired. He handed Mike his wallet and keys packaged in a plastic bag. "They kept the phone for evidence," Bernie said quietly as they stepped into the bright morning sun. "You're charged with sharing private images without permission. It's serious, Mike." "I didn't leak it, Bernie." "I know," Bernie sighed, unlocking the car. "But we have to show who did. Right now. People already believe the worst about you." They got into Bernie's car. The lawyer started the engine but didn't move the car. Instead, he turned on the screen and showed a local news segment. Lanny was on the screen. She sat beside Kendra Hale in the studio, wearing a plain black dress. Her face was sad, tears falling softly as she spoke. "I just wanted a quiet divorce," Lanny said, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "But he tried to hurt me. First, he ruined my wedding dress. When that wasn't enough, he made my private life public. I'm scared of what could happen next." A banner on the screen showed a page for a legal support fund set up for Lanny. Mike stared at it, his jaw clenched tight. The world thought he was a cruel and angry man. He felt like he had hit the lowest point. At Chad's apartment, energy filled the air, tense and chaotic. He sat at a messy desk, clicking to refresh his social media numbers. The numbers were huge. His followers had tripled overnight. His inbox was packed with messages from rude podcast hosts, all asking for interviews about how he took the crazy wife. "This is crazy," Chad said with a smile, looking at the screen. A questionable supplement company had just offered him a big deal for a single post. Behind him, Lanny curled up on the futon, hugging a pillow close to her chest. Her eyes were red and puffy. "Chad, I can't go outside," Lanny whispered, her voice shaky. "People are sending messages to my mom. They're saying awful things. Everyone has seen it." Chad sighed and rolled his eyes before turning his chair to look at her. "Lanny, you need to think bigger. You're famous now. We're famous. This is the best thing that could have happened." "The best thing?" Lanny sat up, staring at him like she couldn't believe what he said. "I am the most hated woman online. I don't have a job, no money, and I'm going through a public trial." "So use it," Chad said sharply, losing his usual charm. He looked at her not with care, but with cold annoyance. "Stop complaining and make money from this. Start a Patreon. Give an interview. I'm not running a charity here, Lanny. You need to pull your weight." Lanny stared at him, feeling breathless. The room suddenly seemed very cold. She looked around the messy apartment, the empty protein tubs, and the man who was acting like this was a win for him. For the first time, a deep, cold regret came over her. She realized she had left a loyal and caring husband to be with a man who only saw her as a way to get attention, and he was happy to see her fall apart. Far away, Mike sat at his mother's kitchen table drinking black coffee. The house was quiet. His laptop made a sound. It was an encrypted call from Elias Thorne. Mike answered. "Tell me you found something." "I got past the proxy the leaker used," Elias said, his voice filled with nervous excitement. Mike sat up straight, feeling less tired. "Did you find out who uploaded the files?" "I got the IP address of the first upload," Elias said, typing sounds heard in the background. "I know exactly where it came from, Mike. You're going to be surprised." "A coffee shop," Elias said through the encrypted line. Mike stayed still at the table. He looked at the glowing green light on his laptop camera. "A coffee shop?" "Yeah, a hip place downtown. The Roasted Bean," Elias said, the sound of keys clicking quickly. "The leaker used a proxy server to hide where it came from, but they made a mistake with the handshake. I traced the IP to the shop's public Wi-Fi. The upload was on Tuesday at 2:15 in the afternoon." "Do they have security cameras?" Mike asked, already thinking. "I checked. They have 3. Elias replied. "But they delete the videos every 48 hours unless there is a legal order to keep them. Mike, I can't break into their system to get the videos and the police won't ask for them." Mike rubbed his jaw. because they think they already caught the person. Exactly. As far as the police were concerned, the case was finished. Without the video, anyone with a laptop in that cafe could have uploaded the file. Mike closed his eyes, feeling heavy with frustration. He opened a new browser tab and typed in Chad's social media name without thinking. The page showed many pictures of Chad in the gym, holding protein shakes and sharing long posts about working hard and staying disciplined. Mike looked closely at a photo of Chad's wrist. He wore an expensive fitness watch. "Wait," Mike said, leaning closer to the screen. "Chad tracks everything. He makes money by sharing his daily routine, his runs, his meals, even where he is." Elias stopped typing. "You mean his fitness app?" Mike's voice grew sharper. "Yes, he shows his routes in real time for all his followers. Check his public page on the Strider app." The line went quiet. After a moment, Elias let out a soft curse. "Got it," he said, sounding excited again. "His profile is open for everyone. On Tuesday afternoon, he ran 3 miles. The run ended right in the downtown area. Check the time," Mike told him. "His run ended at 1:45, Elias said slowly. "Mike, his app kept tracking him while he cooled down. At 2:15, the exact time the video was uploaded, his watch was at the exact spot of the roasted bean." Mike leaned back in his chair, the pieces falling together like a locked vault closing. Chad had been at the coffee shop. The courtroom was lined with dark wood and smelled of lemon polish and old paper. Mike sat next to Bernie at the petitioner's table, hands folded. A few feet away, Kendra Hale walked in front of the judge's bench. "Your Honor, the prenuptial agreement includes a standard morality clause," Kendra said, her voice clear and strong. "Mr. Brady's recent arrest for sharing my client's private images without permission breaks this clause in a big way. He has put my client in danger and harmed her reputation. The prenup should be canceled now, and Mr. Brady's money should be frozen until everything can be fairly divided." The judge, an older woman with strong glasses, looked over her spectacles at Bernie. "Counselor?" Bernie stood slowly and buttoned his jacket. He didn't pace. He stood steady behind the table. "Your Honor, an arrest is not proof of guilt," Bernie said calmly but firmly. "My client is innocent until proven otherwise." The other lawyer was trying to use a police investigation, one that had no digital evidence, as a way to take over the business by force. "He was taken out of his house in handcuffs, Bernie," Kendra said quickly. "Everyone knows about it." "That's true, but Lanny Brady left her home to be with someone else," Bernie replied calmly. "If we start canceling contracts because of personal mistakes, we should begin there." "Enough," the judge said firmly, banging her knuckles on the desk. She looked at the papers, then at Kendra. "Miss Hale, I will not cancel a legal prenuptial agreement because of an unproven criminal charge. The criminal case and the civil case are separate. The prenup remains in effect." Kendra tightened her jaw but gave a quick nod. "Understood, Your Honor." "However," the judge said, looking at Mike, "if Mr. Brady is found guilty of this serious crime, the morality clause will come into play and I will review this motion again. Court is adjourned." Bernie packed up his papers. Mike stood, his face calm but tense. He had won for now, but the bigger fight was still ahead. As they walked down the quiet marble hallway of the courthouse, Bernie's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, then stopped walking. "What is it?" Mike asked. Bernie's face turned serious. "That was my contact at the courthouse. The district attorney isn't dropping the case after our first papers. They just officially charged you. We're going to trial, Mike. If we don't prove Chad's guilt, you lose everything, and prison is possible." The smell of old beer and dirty gym clothes filled Chad's small apartment. Lanny sat at the edge of the futon, staring at her laptop screen. An automated email from GoFundMe read, "Your account has been frozen due to a flagged investigation." She closed her laptop, her hands trembling. Kendra Hale needed a $20,000 fee by the end of the week to keep the civil lawsuit going. Lanny had only $64 in her bank account. The door swung open. Chad came in, sweaty and wearing a tight tank top. He held his phone up, laughing loud. "Yeah, I'll see ya at the VIP lounge tonight," Chad said into the phone with a grin. "Wear the red dress." Lanny stood, feeling uneasy. "Who was that?" Chad ended the call and tossed his phone onto the kitchen counter. He grabbed a drink from the fridge. "Just a friend. Business stuff." "You were flirting with her?" Lanny said, her voice full of disbelief. "I am sitting here? My life is falling apart and you're going on dates?" "Calm down," Chad said sharply, holding a plastic bottle toward her. "My name is getting popular right now. I have to be seen. It's work." "I need money, Chad," Lanny said quickly, her voice shaky. "GoFundMe froze my account. Kendra wants $20,000 or she'll drop my case. You just got a big deal. Please. Chad stopped drinking. He put the bottle down and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. He looked at her and then laughed shortly and coldly. Are you serious? He asked. Yes. I did this for us, she said. You did this because you were bored, Chad said, sounding full of pride and looking down on her. You're an adult, Lanny. I'm not your bank. Want a lawyer? Get a job. He walked past her, bumping her shoulder on purpose, then went to the bathroom. Lanny stood still in the living room. The hope she had held on to for weeks broke completely. Chad never loved her. He never wanted a life with her. He just wanted the fun of causing trouble in another man's life. Now that it was over, she was just a problem. The bathroom door clicked shut. The shower started running. Chad dropped his gym bag on the floor near the couch. As it touched the carpet, something fell out of the side pocket and slid across the floor. Lanny looked down. It was a cheap black prepaid phone, a burner phone. She stared at the small plastic phone on the floor. The sounds of water pipes rattled in the walls as Chad showered. She knelt down and picked it up. She pressed the power button. The screen lit up. There was no password. Her thumb hovered over the screen. A heavy feeling of worry filled her stomach. She knew what she might find would hurt her. She tapped the email app. There was only one account on the device, and the inbox was almost empty. The newest email thread was called Viral Launch Plan. Lanny opened it. It was an email conversation between Chad and a shady overseas public relations company. We can send the video to 3 big gossip sites at once, the PR person wrote. But we need a lot of drama for the algorithm to notice it. Are you sure the husband won't post it first? Chad's answer was short. He's very careful. He won't post it. I'll share it from a hidden source while he's busy with the divorce. Have the fake accounts ready to boost my Instagram when it goes out. Lanny looked at the date on the first email. It was sent 2 weeks before they even went on the tropical trip. Her throat tightened, and she let out a quiet sob. Chad didn't share the video because he was scared or angry. He planned to do it before they even left for the vacation. He had used her to gain followers. Her hands moved without thinking. She took pictures of every email in the conversation. Then she opened her browser, logged into a secret email she hadn't used since college, and sent the pictures to herself. She deleted the sent emails on the temporary phone and went back to the home screen. What are you doing? Lanny turned around quickly. Chad was standing in the bathroom doorway wearing only a towel, his eyes fixed on the black phone in her hand. The casual look on his face disappeared, replaced by a cold, angry look. You planned it, Lanny said quietly, stepping back. You planned to hurt me. Chad moved fast. He grabbed her wrist and twisted it sharply. Lanny cried out. Her fingers loosened and the phone fell onto the carpet. Chad kicked it away behind him. You crazy woman! Chad snapped, holding her tightly. You going through my things? Let me go! Lanny shouted, trying to get free. Chad pushed her backward. She stumbled and hit the armrest of the couch hard. Before she could catch her breath, Chad grabbed her sweater collar, pulled her up, and forced her toward the front door. He unlocked the deadbolt, pushed her out into the hallway, and threw her suitcase after her. Get out of my apartment, Chad said sharply. And if you tell anyone about this, I'll say you leaked the video yourself. He slammed the door. The conference room at Kendra Hale's office felt cold. Mike sat at one side of the long glass table, sitting very still as Lanny took her seat across from him. She looked awful. Her hair was dirty, her skin was pale, and dark circles hung under her eyes. She had a big duffel bag all packed by her feet. Kendra Hale sat next to her, looking annoyed by her messy appearance. At the end of the table, a court reporter was ready with a typing machine. Let the record show we are starting the civil deposition of Lanny Brady, Bernie said, turning on a digital recorder. He looked at Lanny over his legal pad. Mrs. Brady, do you understand you are under oath? Yes, Lanny whispered, her eyes moving nervously towards Mike. Mike didn't move. He just watched her carefully. Let's talk about the second video, Bernie said, calm and steady. The private recording. Who had the file? My husband, Lanny answered. Mike. And Chad? Did he have the video? Lanny hesitated. She knew the truth. She had the screenshots in her secret inbox. She could stop this now. But if she said Chad had it, she would have to admit she had been fooled. Her expensive lawsuit against Mike would fall apart. She would lose everything. Chad deleted his copy, Lanny said, her voice shaking. Mike was the only one who had it. Are you sure? Bernie asked calmly. That question has already been answered, Kendra said sharply. I'll ask differently, Bernie said without stopping. Mrs. Brady, where was Chad on Tuesday afternoon, specifically from 1:30 to 2:30? Lanny's heart beat fast. Why ask about Tuesday? That was the day the video was leaked. If she told the truth, that Chad wasn't home, it might help Mike's lawyer. He was with me, Lanny said quickly. In his apartment the whole time. Mike felt any remaining sympathy for Lanny disappear. She was choosing to protect herself even if it meant he could be punished. Bernie stopped writing. He put his pen down on the glass table. The soft click filled the quiet room. He leaned forward and stared at Lanny. Are you very sure about that, Mrs. Brady? He asked quietly, almost like a warning, because lying under oath can lead to 5 years in prison. Lanny swallowed hard but lifted her head. I'm sure, she said. The next morning, Chad walked into the deposition room with confidence. He wore a blue suit that was a bit tight across his chest, clearly picked to show off his build. He sat across from Bernie, gave the court reporter a bright, practiced smile, and relaxed back in his chair. State your name for the record, Bernie said. Chadwick Vance, Chad replied smoothly. Bernie opened a folder. He didn't look angry. It seemed more like he was an uncle asking about a nephew's hobby. Mr. Vance, you have gained a lot of followers online lately, Bernie said. Your brand focuses on fitness, discipline, and full honesty. Is that right? Chad smirked and glanced at Kendra, who looked a bit confused by the questioning. Yeah, that's right. I don't believe in excuses. I work hard and share it with my fans. Very good, Bernie nodded. You use the Strider app to track your daily exercises, yes? You post your runs, heart rate, and GPS routes? Every day, Chad said proudly, puffing out his chest. Complete transparency. Some say these apps can have errors, Bernie said gently, that the GPS data might be wrong or fake. Not mine, Chad said firmly. I use top-quality devices connected right to my phone. My data is completely accurate. That's how I build trust with my fans. I wouldn't lie. So, if your Strider app showed you ran a 3-mile route downtown on Tuesday afternoon, finishing at 1:45, that would be correct? Chad frowned, trying to find the trick in the question. Yes, he said. I ran on Tuesday. And if the app kept sending your GPS location showing you sitting inside the Roasted Bean coffee shop from 1:45 until 2:30, would that also be correct? Chad's confident smile disappeared. His face went pale. He looked at Kendra, but she was staring at Bernie with sudden, sharp concern. I might have gone for a coffee, Chad said nervously. At exactly 2:15, Bernie said, his voice losing all kindness and becoming very cold and clear. The exact time a private video of you and Mrs. Brady was put online. That's just a coincidence, Chad said loudly, holding tightly to his chair. Bernie reached into his briefcase. He took out a single sheet of paper and slid it across the glass table. This is a record from the coffee shop's public Wi-Fi, Bernie said, looking straight at Chad. It shows a large file was uploaded at 2:15. That file did not come from my client's phone. My client was at work. Chad looked at the paper as if it was poison. Kendra Hale said sharply, breaking the tense quiet in the room. Sidebar, now! Bernie nodded to the court reporter to pause the recording. Kendra stood, picked up the paper Bernie had slid over, and gestured toward the private room next door. Bernie followed her, leaving Mike sitting quietly with a worried Chad and a frightened Lanny. Once the heavy glass door clicked shut, Kendra turned to Bernie. What is this, Bernard? She asked, holding up the router log. You can't prove who uploaded that file just by a public IP address. I don't need to, Bernie said calmly. He pulled out a second sheet of paper from his jacket pocket and gave it to her. My digital expert found the MAC address. That's a unique ID for the device that used the coffee shop's Wi-Fi at 2:15. It's a prepaid burner phone. Kendra looked over the document, her eyes narrowing. And before you say a burner phone means nothing, Bernie said, stepping closer. I had someone check where the MAC address showed up. It connected to the cell tower above Chad Vance's apartment for 3 weeks before the leak. That device belongs to him. He planned this. He staged the video, downloaded it from a cloud server, and shared it himself to get attention. Kendra stopped reading. She slowly set the paper down. As a tough lawyer, Kendra was used to hard moves, tricky situations, and fierce battles. But she was also an officer of the court. She knew that showing false evidence or letting a client lie in court could cost her license. She looked out through the glass wall of the conference room, thinking deeply. Chad was pacing nervously, arguing with Lanny, who hid her face in her hands. They had lied to her. They had made up evidence, tricked the legal system, and almost caused her to fail with them. Kendra's face turned hard. She pushed the papers back toward Bernie's chest. Then she left the small room and walked back into the larger space. Chad stopped pacing and looked at her with a desperate look. "Kendra, wait, I can explain." "Stop," Kendra said, her voice cold and sharp. She grabbed her leather briefcase from the table and quickly put her papers inside. She snapped the locks closed with a firm sound. Lanny looked up, scared. "Kendra, what are you doing?" Kendra grabbed her coat. She looked at Lanny, then at Chad, with clear disgust. "You're alone now," Kendra said. "I'm leaving you." The heavy glass door closed behind Kendra Hale. Chad and Lanny sat still in their chairs, staring at the empty spot where their powerful lawyer had just stood. The room was quiet except for the soft sound of the air conditioner. Bernie calmly reached across the table, picking up the router log and the MAC address report. He put them carefully back in his leather case. He didn't brag. He didn't even look at Chad. He just snapped the locks closed. "We're finished here," Bernie said. He looked at Mike. "Let's go." Mike stood, fixed his jacket, and gave Lanny one last empty look before turning away and walking out. An hour later, they were sitting in the large, bright office of the district attorney. The DA, a sharp-faced man named Harris, sat behind his desk reading a forensic report from Elias Thorne. He read it twice. He looked at the verified Strider app data, the coffee shop IP logs, and the burner phone's cell tower records. Harris dropped the file on his desk and rubbed his temples, clearly angry. "They tricked us," Harris said quietly. "Vance made up the timeline, used a fake source, and let us arrest the husband so he could act like the victim online. My client was taken from his home in handcuffs," Bernie said firmly. "He spent the night in a cell. He lost his job. I want the charges dropped, Harris. Now." "You have it," Harris said right away. "I'm dropping all charges against Mr. Brady. It will be official within the hour." Harris picked up the phone on his desk and pressed a button. "Get me the lead detective on the Brady case. Tell him to prepare an immediate arrest warrant for Chadwick Vance. Charges for false reporting, messing with evidence, and serious misuse of media." Mike left the courthouse 15 minutes later. The midday sun was very bright. A small group of local reporters, told about the sudden dismissal, gathered at the bottom of the concrete steps holding out their microphones. "Mr. Brady, is it true the charges were dropped?" one shouted. "What do you want to say to your wife?" Bernie moved forward to block them, but Mike put a hand on his lawyer's shoulder. Mike looked straight at the closest camera. His face was calm and serious. "The truth doesn't need to shout," Mike said softly. "It just needs time." He walked past the reporters and got into Bernie's car. Free. The porch light at Brenda's house flickered on as evening came. Mike opened the front door and looked at the woman standing on the welcome mat. Lanny looked completely broken. She wore the same big sweater from earlier, but now it was stained. Her fancy suitcase was gone. She held only a cheap plastic shopping bag. "Mike," Lanny said with a shaky voice, tears filling her eyes. "Please." Mike didn't invite her inside. He stood in the doorway, blocking the light from the hallway behind him. "What do you want, Lanny?" "I can help you," she said fast, almost desperate. "Chad did it. He leaked the video. I found a burner phone in his gym bag. He planned this with some PR people before our trip. I emailed pictures to myself before he kicked me out. I have proof to clear your name." She looked at him with hopeful, urgent eyes, waiting for relief to show on his face. She wanted him to thank her, to let her in, to let her back into his life. But Mike just looked at her. Slowly, he took his phone from his pocket. He tapped it twice and held it out so she could see. It was a news alert from a local channel. The headline read, "Arrest warrant issued for influencer, Chad Vance in revenge porn scandal." Lanny's mouth fell open. The phone shook slightly in Mike's hand, its dim light falling on her shocked face. "I already cleared my name," Mike said coldly. "I didn't need your help. I didn't need your screenshots. And I don't need you." The truth hit her hard. She had kept those screenshots as her last chance, a way to get back with him. But it was too late. She had nothing left to offer the man she betrayed. Mike reached to the table behind him. He picked up a thick envelope and held it out. "What's that?" Lanny whispered. "The original, unchanged divorce papers," Mike said. "Sign them." "Mike, I don't have a lawyer anymore. I have nowhere to live." "I can't just sign everything away," Lanny said, her voice shaky. "Sign," Mike cut in, his voice low and cold. "Or tomorrow, Bernie will send your deposition papers to the DA, and you'll end up like Chad, in jail for lying." The night was quiet except for crickets in Brenda's front yard. Lanny stared at the envelope Mike held out to her. Her breath became quick and shallow. The confidence she had kept for weeks was gone. Now she faced a fight to survive. Trembling, she took the envelope and pulled out the stack of papers inside. Mike gave her a black pen. She flipped to the last page. The streetlight shone on the harsh words. By signing, she would give up all claims to money, property, and Mike's business. She would also accept a large debt from Kendra Hale's legal costs, money she could never pay. Tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. She looked at Mike one last time, hoping to see some softness. There was none. She pressed the pen to the paper and signed her name. Then she handed the papers back. Mike checked the signature and closed the door silently. The sound of the lock echoed. He leaned his forehead against the door, expecting a rush of relief or victory. Instead, a heavy weight lifted from his chest. The marriage was over, the pain removed. He felt calm. Far away, in a small, bright studio, Chad sat before a microphone. He was live on the Savage Truth podcast, wearing a black t-shirt and leaning close to the camera. The stream had 40,000 viewers. "The system attacks men who refuse to be average," Chad shouted into the mic, ignoring his phone buzzing with messages. "They want to keep you under control. The moment you step out of line, the whole world turns against you. But I don't give up. Suddenly, the studio door blew open. Chad jumped and looked toward the door. 2 police officers stepped inside, serious and steady. "Chadwick Vance?" the taller officer asked, hand on his belt. "Stand up and step away from the desk," the officer ordered. Chad's confident attitude disappeared. His eyes flicked to the live viewer count, rising past 50,000. "Hey, guys, we're live right now. You can't just—" "Stand up, Mr. Vance," the officer said firmly, moving to take action. "You're under arrest." Live, with thousands watching online, Chad Vance was made to stand, turned around, and put in handcuffs. The county jail smelled bad, like strong cleaning chemicals and wet concrete. Chad sat on a plastic chair in the visitor's booth, his orange jumpsuit hanging loose on him. Across the scratched glass window, his new lawyer, a tired-looking public defender, sat quietly. "I need to pay bail," Chad said, tapping his cuffed hands on the table. "I have to get in front of a camera and explain. People will understand if I just tell them—" "You don't have any fans left to explain to," the lawyer said calmly. Chad froze. "What do you mean?" The lawyer opened a thin file. "Mike Brady filed a big lawsuit against you this morning. He's not after your bank accounts. He knows you have no real money." "Then what is the lawsuit for?" "Your brand," the lawyer said, tapping the paper. "He put a legal claim on your company, your trademarks, social media pages, and website names. All your sponsors dropped you as soon as you got arrested during that live stream. Your accounts are frozen." Chad's breath caught. The small room felt tight around him. His money was not real, but his attention, his fame, was all he had. "He can't take my accounts," he whispered, panic growing in his voice. "That's my whole life." "He already has a court order," the lawyer said. "If you want me to fight this case, my office needs $50,000 up front. Can you pay that today?" Chad looked at him with wide, empty eyes. He didn't have that kind of money. He barely had $5,000 in cash. The fancy cars, the watches, the expensive life. It was all rented or bought with loans. "I don't have money," Chad said, his voice breaking. "Then you have no defense," the lawyer said, closing the file. "Brady's lawyers offered a deal. If you give up all your social media accounts and brand rights to his company, he will drop the lawsuit. You keep your debt, but he takes your voice." Chad's worst fear, being forgotten completely, hit him hard. He slumped forward in the plastic chair, hiding his face in his cuffed hands and crying quietly as he realized he was losing everything. Room 114 at the Starlight Motel smelled like old smoke and cheap cleaner. Lanny sat at the worn desk in the corner, writing fast on a pad of paper. Her hand hurt. This was her 4th letter to Mike. "I know you don't like me," she wrote, her tears falling onto the lines. "But I hope you can see how sorry I am. I need you to look me in the eye and tell me it was real before Chad changed everything. Please, Mike, just 5 minutes of your time." She folded the letter carefully and put it in an envelope. Then she sealed it with a lick. She wanted a big moment with Mike. She wanted him to shout at her, to say angry things, to show that he felt hurt because she was gone. If he got mad and argued, it meant he still cared. It meant she was not just a forgotten mistake, but someone important in a sad story about love. A quick knock at the door made her jump. Lanny hurried over and opened it. The motel manager was standing outside. He was a heavy man holding a clipboard, and he did not look happy. "Checkout was at 11, he said. "Your card didn't work for the extra day." I just need one more day, Lanny said, pulling her wallet from her pocket. "Let me try another card." She gave him a silver card. The man swiped it through the small machine on his clipboard. It made a sharp, angry beep. "Declined," he said, giving the card back. "You have 20 minutes to leave the room or I will call the police." He walked away. Lanny went back into the dull room. Her chest rose and fell fast with fear. She grabbed her phone and called Mike's number. She just wanted him to answer. She wanted to hear his voice so she could ask for help. "We're sorry. The number you have called is no longer in service," the voice on the phone said. The quiet room felt emptier. Lanny put the phone down and looked at the small pile of envelopes on the bed. They were her first 3 letters to Mike. Each one came back to her with big red letters stamped on them. Return to sender. He was not reading her letters. He was not angry or saving them to throw away later. He was simply sending them back. The silence broke her heart. Not being hated but ignored hurt more than any angry words. Mike did not care about her at all now. She was like a ghost, someone who didn't exist. The bright lights of the roadside diner buzzed quietly above. Lanny sat in a cracked booth. She held a cup of cold coffee with both hands to stop them from shaking. The bell over the door rang. Steve came inside. He did not take off his coat. He sat down in the seat across from her. His back was straight and his face was serious. He looked at her messy hair, tired eyes, and the dirty collar of her shirt. A small sign of sadness showed in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. "Dad," Lanny said quietly, reaching her hand across the table. Steve pulled his hands away and put them in his lap. "Don't, Lanny," he said. "I have nowhere else to go," she said softly, her voice breaking. "Chad made me leave. I lost the case. I'm living in my car. You have to help me." Steve reached inside his big coat. He took out a thick white envelope and slid it across the sticky table. "There's $2,000 in cash inside," Steve said, his voice low and tight. "It's enough for a deposit and the first month's rent on a simple studio apartment in the industrial area. Not a nice place, just a roof over your head." Lanny picked up the envelope, relief washing over her. "Thank you. Oh, God, thank you, Dad. I promise I'll pay you back. I'll come by the house tomorrow and—" "We won't be there," Steve said, cutting her off. Lanny stopped, surprised. "What?" "Your mother and I are moving," Steve said, staring out the diner window at the dark road. "I took early retirement. We bought a small place in Florida. We leave in the morning." "You're leaving the state?" Fear tightened her voice. "But what about me?" Steve finally looked at her. His eyes were wet, but his face was hard. "You hurt a good man, Lanny. You made our family name look bad for someone not worth it. Your mother's heart is broken. If we stay, we'll only keep helping you make bad choices." "Dad, no. We're changing our numbers," he said, standing up. "Do not try to find us. We will not talk for a year. You need to hit rock bottom and find a way to build yourself back up because no one else will do it for you." He didn't wait for an answer. He turned and walked out of the diner. 2 weeks later, the constant sound of machines filled the humid air. Lanny leaned against a folding table in a 24-hour laundromat, wearing a worn blue smock with a name tag pinned to her chest. She wiped sweat from her forehead, tired from sweeping lint and bleach off the floor. She looked up at the small, quiet TV in the corner. The local news was on. The camera showed a fancy company event. In the middle of the crowd, dressed in a neat dark suit and smiling with his co-workers, was Mike. He looked healthier and stronger than she'd ever seen him. Lanny stared until the program switched to a commercial. She picked up her broom, feeling alone. The late afternoon sun cast long, warm shadows across Mike's backyard. Mike stood by a large blackened patch in the ground. The ash had settled after the rain, but it still looked like a deep scar in the earth. A loud engine grew closer down the driveway. Fred's pickup truck parked near the side gate. Fred climbed out carrying 2 heavy metal shovels. Behind him, Zach, a strong friend from Mike's college days, shouldered a big bag of crushed gravel. "Ready to work?" Fred asked, tossing a shovel toward Mike. Mike caught it by the sturdy wooden handle. "Let's start digging." They worked for 3 hours to clear away the thick, burnt remains from the middle of the pit. They didn't fill it up. Instead, they made it deeper. Zach pushed wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow of heavy flat stones into the yard. They put down a thick layer of gravel first. Then they carefully stacked the stones in tight, overlapping circles around the edge, making a wide, sunken seating area. In the very center, Fred built a strong iron ring and lined it with special fire bricks. By 8 o'clock, the old damage was gone. In its place stood a beautiful, simple outdoor fire pit. "Not bad for a group of beginners," Zach said, wiping soot from his forehead with a rag. Fred lit a match and dropped it into the kindling inside the iron ring. The flames caught quickly, sending a warm, friendly light over the gray stones. Later that night, the yard was filled with soft talk and laughter. About a dozen friends, including David from work and Bernie, stood around the sunken pit, drinking beer and sharing stories. The bad memory of the old bonfire hadn't disappeared. It had been changed. What was once a place of anger was now a place of warmth. A woman from the marketing team walked down the stone steps into the pit. She stood next to Mike, the firelight shining in her hair. "It's a lovely place, Mike," she said quietly. She reached out and gently touched his forearm. Her eyes showed her feelings clearly. Mike looked at her hand, then met her eyes. He smiled kindly. "Thank you," Mike said. He stepped back slowly, letting her hand fall away without making it awkward. "It took a lot of digging." He wasn't pushing her away because he was upset. He was just setting a limit. He was healing on his own time, and he was in control of it. The heavy wooden gavel hit the sounding block. Chad Vance stood before the judge. The confident, well-dressed influencer from the questioning was gone. Now, he wore a loose, faded orange jumpsuit. His wrists were chained at the waist. His face was red, wet with tears. "Your Honor, please," Chad said, leaning toward the microphone on the defense table. His voice echoed softly in the large courtroom. "I made a mistake. I got caught up in internet craziness. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. If you send me to prison, I won't be able to fix my life. Everything's ruined." The judge looked at him with a hard, steady gaze. "Mr. Vance, you didn't just make a mistake," she said, her voice loud and clear. "You planned and carried out a harmful act against an innocent man. You used the police in a way they were never meant to be used. You showed no regret until you were caught." Chad buried his face in his chained hands and cried loudly. The judge said, "For filing a false police report and sharing private images without permission, you are sentenced to 18 months in a state correctional facility. Take the prisoner into custody." 2 officers stepped forward and took Chad by the arms. He kept crying and asking for another chance as they led him out through the heavy wooden doors at the back of the courtroom. The doors closed, stopping his voice. Mike sat quietly in the gallery, watching him leave. He did not smile. Instead, he breathed out slowly. The problem was finally over. As Mike stood to leave, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He took it out. It was a message from his bank. The money from the legal case, from closing Chad's company and selling the last of his things, had arrived. It was a big amount. Mike did not put the phone away. He tapped the screen, picked the full amount, and sent it right to a local charity for people affected by domestic abuse. He pressed send, put the phone back in his pocket, and stepped outside into the sunlight. Meanwhile, rain beat against the only dirty window of Lanny's small apartment. She sat cross-legged on a thin mattress on the floor. The room was cold, warmed only by a small heater making noise in the corner. Next to her was a plastic cup and a cheap bottle of red wine, half empty. Lanny stared at her cracked phone screen. It was October 14th, her anniversary. Quiet tears ran down her cheeks. She looked through a hidden folder of old pictures. There was Mike, laughing on a beach. Mike holding her hand at a restaurant. Mike looking at her with love and trust, a love she had given up for a man now locked away. She took a small, shaky sip of the wine. The lonely feeling was heavy. She thought about Mike sitting alone in his house, looking at the walls, feeling the same sadness. Across the city, the mood was very different. At a fancy steakhouse downtown, the private dining room was full of laughter and the sound of glasses clinking. Mike sat at the head of the table with David and the senior partners of his firm. The table was full of empty plates, fine bottles of wine, and a freshly signed contract from a major new client. David stood and raised his glass. "I want to make a toast," he said, his voice clear over the noise. He looked at Mike with real respect. "To Mike, you handled an impossible situation this year with more grace and strength than I've ever seen, and you just secured the biggest account our firm has ever had. We're lucky to have you. The room filled with applause. Glasses touched together and smiles spread around the table. Mike smiled and lifted his glass of sparkling water, feeling calm and relaxed. He didn't check his phone. He didn't look at the calendar. He didn't even know what day it was. The strong connection between them was finally broken. Back in her cold apartment, Lanny dropped her phone on the bed. She curled up, hugging her knees, quietly crying in the empty room. She realized clearly that she couldn't breathe in this city anymore. Every corner, every diner, every face reminded her of what she had lost. She couldn't stay here any longer. The trunk of the old car clicked shut. Lanny pulled her jacket hood up against the cold night air. Everything she owned, just 3 bags and a box of winter clothes, was packed in the back of the cheap car she bought with her first paycheck from the laundromat. She got into the driver's seat and started the engine. It made a rough noise. She put the car in gear and slowly moved away from the sidewalk in the industrial area. She was driving out of state. She didn't know where to, just that she had to leave. About 10 minutes later, as she reached the highway entrance, a familiar pain tightened in her chest. She turned on her signal and left the main road, driving through the winding streets of the suburbs until she turned onto Mike's street. She stopped the car quietly across from his house, keeping her headlights off. The house looked perfect. The lawn was neat and trimmed, but it was the backyard that caught her eye. Over the tall wooden fence, a soft orange light warmed the dark night. She rolled down her window. The fresh smell of burning wood floated on the breeze. She could hear people talking quietly. Someone laughed, a deep, easy laugh. It was Mike. Lanny sat alone in her cold car. She looked at the warm light shining over the fence. He was with friends. He was safe, warm, and didn't seem to miss her. She was outside in the dark. He was inside in the light. A heavy, complete feeling settled in her heart. There was no more fighting, no more trying to hold on. This was her life now, a life full of regret. She rolled up the window, put the car in drive, and slowly drove away toward the highway without looking back. In the backyard, Mike stood near the stone fire pit, holding a fire poker. He glanced toward the street just as he saw the faint red lights fade around the corner. Zach came up beside him and handed him a fresh beer. "Everything okay?" Zach asked. Mike watched the empty street for a moment longer. "Yeah," Mike said quietly, turning away from the road and stepping closer to the fire. "Everything is perfect." The corner office was calm, quiet, far from the busy noise of the marketing floor outside. Mike sat in the leather chair across from his boss, David. A thick folder shone on the desk between them. The morning sun hit the glass walls of the tall building. "We want you to be the vice president of the Western Division," David said. He leaned forward and put his arms on the desk, his face serious. "You showed us your worth this year, Mike. Not just by closing the biggest deal this company has ever had, but by staying strong when things were tough. You didn't give up. The partners noticed." Mike looked at the folder but did not reach for it right away. "The Western Division is in Denver?" "Yes," David said. "You would have to move there. It comes with a big raise, all moving costs paid, and a brand new start. I know your life is here, but I wouldn't offer this if I didn't think you could do the job." Mike looked out the window. He saw the city skyline he knew well, the streets he had driven every day for years, the place where he had built a marriage that ended badly. Nothing was keeping him now. The divorce was done. His ex-wife was out of his life. The man who caused him trouble was locked away. Mike had fixed his name and found peace, but this city was all behind him now. He didn't have to stay to prove anything to anyone. "I'll take it," Mike said. David smiled big and reached out his hand. "Congratulations, Mike. You earned this." Mike shook his hand, took the folder, and left the office. He did not feel a sudden rush of excitement. Instead, he felt a calm and steady push forward. An hour later, Mike drove his truck into his driveway. The house looked the same as always. The lawn was neat. The fire pit in the backyard was clean. He didn't go inside right away. He stood and looked at the front door. He had bought this house hoping to raise a family here. It had become a place for struggles, and then a place to heal. Now, looking at the walls and roof, he saw it was just a building, empty space inside. Mike pulled out his phone and called. "Hello? This is Marcus," the real estate agent answered. "Marcus, it's Mike Brady," Mike said, watching the window. "I want to put the house up for sale." "Oh, okay, Mike. When do you want to list it?" "Today," Mike said, turning away from the house and walking to his truck. "List it for whatever it's worth. I'm moving on." The big wooden door to Bernie's office was open. Mike walked in carrying a small box of legal papers and printed statements he didn't need anymore. He set the box at the edge of Bernie's desk. Bernie looked up from his laptop and pushed his glasses down his nose with a tired sigh. "The last papers?" Mike said, tapping the box. "It's all finished." Bernie nodded and leaned back in his chair. He grabbed one sheet of paper from his top drawer and slid it across the desk. It was a bill for his final month of work. At the bottom, the total said 0. "I can't accept this, Bernie," Mike said, frowning at the paper. "You worked so hard on this case. You kept me out of trouble." "I'm not charging you," Bernie said, his voice firm. "I've done family law for 20 years. I deal with tricky people every day. Watching you stay calm and strong was something to learn from. Think of it as a favor. Buy me a beer if you come back to town." Mike looked at Bernie with gratitude deep in his chest. He reached out his hand across the desk and gave Bernie a strong shake. "Thank you, Bernie, for everything." 30 minutes later, Mike sat in a busy coffee shop downtown. Elias Thorne slid into the booth across from him, looking tired, wearing a worn black hoodie. Elias dropped a small, heavy object on the table. It was a military-grade encrypted hard drive. "What's this?" Mike asked. "A full backup of the digital proof," Elias said quietly, tapping the metal case. "The timestamps, the logs, the traces, everything that showed you were innocent." "I don't need this," Mike said. "The case is closed. He's gone." "Keep it," Elias said, pushing it closer to Mike's coffee cup. "Not for court. Just in case one day you need to remember how strong you are. You beat them at their own game, Mike. Don't forget that." Mike picked up the heavy drive and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "I won't." "Thanks, Elias." By late afternoon, the sun was going down behind the trees in Mike's neighborhood. A big moving truck sat running in the driveway. Fred and Zach lifted the last piece of furniture, a heavy oak dresser, into the back of the truck. They tied it down with thick straps. Mike pulled the metal door down with a loud sound that echoed along the quiet street. He locked the brass padlock. He grabbed a cooler from his truck and tossed a cold beer to each of them. "Well, that's the last of it," Zach said, opening his beer and taking a long drink. "Denver, huh? Trading the fire pit for the mountains?" "That's the plan," Mike smiled. Fred leaned against the back of the truck, looking at the empty house. "We're going to miss you around here, man. But you're doing the right thing. There's nothing left for you in this town." "I know," Mike said softly, looking at his two friends. He felt a deep warmth inside. He realized he had found strong support during the hardest time of his life. He wasn't leaving broken. He was leaving stronger. "I'll keep a guest room ready for you guys." The moving truck's cab hummed with the steady, calm vibration of the highway. Mike held the steering wheel tightly, his eyes on the gray road stretching far ahead. The sun rose behind him, lighting up the flat Nebraska plains with soft light. He drove in quiet for the first 4 hours. No music, no talking. Just the sound of the engine and the wind moving past the windows. He stopped at a small diner just past North Platte. The building was made of old metal and smelled like cooking oil and fresh coffee. Mike sat at the counter. A waitress in a worn pink apron poured him a cup of black coffee without asking. He drank slowly, watching big trucks zoom by on the road outside. A year ago, he had sat in his room watching a video that broke everything he believed. He had felt trapped by betrayal, surrounded by the pieces of a life that wasn't real. He had faced shame and loss and been pushed to his lowest point. Now, sitting in this quiet diner, his chest felt light. No problems were chasing him, no court dates, no papers, no bad news, just the open road. Mike paid and left a good tip on the counter. He walked back to the truck, climbed in, and started the engine. This time, he turned on the radio. A classic rock song played softly in the background. He put the truck in gear and drove back onto the highway. After about an hour, a big green sign appeared on the right side. "Welcome to Colorado." As the truck crossed the state line, Mike rolled down the window. The air was cooler here, fresh and sharp, with the faint smell of pine trees. He rested his elbow on the window frame, feeling the wind on his face. He did not look back in the mirror. Instead, he looked ahead at the snowy mountains rising in the distance. He had made it through the fire. True freedom was waiting for him. The bright lights of the discount store buzzed annoyingly. Lanny stood behind the customer service counter in a dull suburb of Columbus, Ohio. 2 years had passed. She wore a red polo shirt with a plastic name tag that said Lanny, shift manager. She looked quickly over a set of returned bed sheets, ignoring the woman standing on the other side of the counter who sighed in impatience. "The refund will take 3 to 5 business days," Lanny said, her voice tired and flat. She gave the receipt back without looking up. "You should smile more," the customer said quietly, grabbing the paper and walking away. Lanny closed her eyes and bit her cheek until she could taste something sharp. The store smelled of cheap plastic and floor cleaner. She hated this place. She hated the dull, endless routine of her life. A car horn honked loudly from outside. Lanny looked through the glass doors. Greg's old silver car was waiting in the fire lane. Greg leaned over from the driver's seat, tapping his watch in a way that showed he was annoyed. He was an ordinary man who worked at an auto parts store nearby. He watched her phone, criticized what she wore, and made her split the rent on their small apartment down to the exact cent. He honked again, holding his hand out in frustration. Lanny turned away and signaled a young cashier to take over. She went into the small, windowless break room to get her coat. She pulled her phone from her locker. The screen lit up with a message from LinkedIn. She hadn't looked at the app in a long time. She touched the screen. "Congratulate Michael Brady on his new job as Vice President of the Western Division." Under the message was a professional photo of Mike. He looked confident and well-dressed. Behind him, tall windows showed a view from a high-rise office. A sharp, sudden feeling of jealousy rose in Lanny's chest. Her throat grew tight. That life was supposed to be hers. She was meant to be the wife of a rich executive, living in a nice city, respected and loved. She had almost reached that life. The jealousy burned hot and then faded. It turned into a heavy feeling of bitter acceptance. She had made her choice. She had left a loyal man for someone selfish. And now she had lost everything. Greg's horn sounded one more time, loud and demanding. Lanny looked at Mike's smiling face one last time. She opened the phone's settings, went to the bottom of the menu, and chose Delete Account. She turned off her phone, put on her worn winter coat, and stepped out into the cold, rainy Ohio night, thinking about the quiet, dull life she had made for herself. The heavy metal gates of the state prison opened with a slow noise. Chad Vance stepped out onto the gravel by the side of the highway. 2 years had changed him. He had lost weight and his pride was gone. The strong muscles he had worked hard to build in the gym had disappeared because of bad prison food and the tough life inside. He wore cheap jeans and a plain gray sweatshirt given to him by the parole board. He didn't look back at the prison fence with the razor wire. He walked slowly to the bus stop, holding a small plastic bag with a prepaid phone he had bought with his last money from the prison store. He sat on a wooden bench and turned the phone on. His hands shook a little as he downloaded a popular social media app. He had lost his old accounts, his special badges, and his online names. Mike had taken them all in a legal case to settle a lawsuit, but Chad still believed in himself. He thought he had enough charm to start over and build his life again. He made a new username, The Real Chad Vance. He held the phone up to catch the sunlight and forced his old, confident smile. "Hey, everyone," Chad said to the phone, trying to sound sure like he used to. "They tried to keep me down. They tried to stop me from speaking the truth, but I'm back and better than before. Follow me because my comeback will be amazing." He pressed post. He sat on the bench, refreshing the page, his heart beating fast with hope. He needed people to notice him. 10 minutes later, the app showed his video to people nearby. The notifications started to pop up. Chad smiled and opened the comments, but his smile disappeared quickly. "Isn't this the guy who went to prison?" What a joke. He looks so old now. Good luck working fast food. Criminal. Fake. Stay away from the internet. The comments came one after another, all full of anger and dislike. The internet hadn't forgotten him, but it hadn't forgiven him either. His reputation was ruined. He wasn't a popular leader anymore. He was known as someone who broke the law and was laughed at by many. Chad looked at the screen, breathing fast and shallow. The one thing he had always wanted most, attention, had turned against him. He felt sick inside and knew he could never show his face online again. He deleted the video. Then he removed the app from his phone. The next morning, under a hot sun, Chad Vance put on a hard hat. He lifted a heavy bag of cement and carried it across a dusty construction site. He had no choice but to do hard, tiring work, just to follow the rules of his parole. The bright sun reflected off tall glass buildings in downtown Denver. Meanwhile, Mike stood in the kitchen of his clean, simple apartment. He poured himself a cup of dark coffee. The room was neat and empty of extra things. Everything was in its place. A wall of windows showed a wide, clear view of the Rocky Mountains. He was doing well. In his new job as a leader, he had made the Western Division steady, doubled their earnings for the quarter, and earned a reputation as a calm and very able boss. He had money saved, a deep sense of peace, and a weekend habit of hiking trails near the city. He picked up his coffee and looked at his watch. It was Saturday. An hour later, Mike walked into a busy small bookstore downtown. He moved through the narrow aisles toward the history section. When he reached for a hardcover biography, his hand almost touched someone else's. "Oh, sorry," a woman said, pulling her hand back with a soft laugh. Mike looked down. She had dark hair, bright, smart eyes, and a warm, easy smile. She wore a cozy wool sweater and held a pile of paperbacks. "My fault," Mike said, stepping back politely. "You go ahead." "It's the last one," she said, looking at the book. "I don't want to take it if you were here first." "I have some at home I haven't read yet," Mike smiled. "I'm Mike." "Sarah," she said, taking the book. They stood there for 10 minutes, chatting naturally about the author, the city, and nearby coffee shops. It didn't feel forced or fake. Sarah was real, thoughtful, and down to earth. "I was just about to get a coffee," Sarah said, holding her books. "If you're not busy, you can come with me." Mike looked at her. A few years ago, meeting someone new like this would have made him nervous and full of doubts. He would have looked for tricks or lies under the smile. Now, he only felt calm and interested. "I'd like that," Mike said. They left the bookstore together. Mike was ready to have a close friend again, but he wasn't rushing anything. He didn't need a perfect romantic story to feel complete. He was moving slowly, in control, and ready to share his calm life. The winter air in Denver was cold and fresh, hinting that the first big snow was coming. Mike stood in his bedroom, sorting through a box of winter clothes he had not unpacked since he moved. He pulled out a heavy, dark blue coat, checking the pockets before hanging it in the closet. As his fingers touched something small inside the chest pocket, he pulled it out. It was a small black SD card. Mike frowned and turned the card over in his hand. He walked to the living room, sat at his neat wooden desk, and plugged the card into his laptop. A folder appeared on the screen named Archive. He clicked it. The screen showed clear pictures. They were photos from his wedding to Lanny. Mike leaned back in his chair. He clicked through the photos. There was Lanny in the white dress he had once thrown into the fire. There was Mike, looking very young, smiling at her with pure, honest love. There were pictures of people toasting, dancing, and cutting the cake. He stopped on a close-up of Lanny laughing. He waited for the usual burn of anger in his chest. He waited for the sharp pain of betrayal that had kept him awake many nights. He waited for the hurt over the lawsuit, the arrest, and the shame. But none of it came. He felt no anger. He felt no sadness. He looked at the woman in the photo and felt nothing at all. He just saw two young people, one of whom was a total stranger now. He felt completely disconnected. He did not say bad things about her. He did not feel the need to burn the SD card to find closure. The pain no longer needed a ritual to handle. Mike moved his mouse. He selected the whole folder. He dragged it to the trash bin. He right-clicked and chose Empty Bin. The computer asked, "Are you sure you want to delete these two M44 items for good?" Mike clicked yes. The progress bar flashed quickly, and the folder was gone. Just one click. Mike pulled the empty SD card from the slot, dropped it into his desk drawer, and closed his laptop. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, and started a pot of coffee, leaving the past where it belonged. Outside, the Denver skyline was a jagged shape against the dark purple morning sky. Mike stepped onto his high balcony, the cold air fresh and sharp in his lungs. He held a warm cup of coffee, the steam rising into the cold air. The city below was just starting to wake. The soft sound of traffic was steady like a heartbeat. He leaned against the metal railing and looked toward the snow-covered mountains far away. He was 36 years old. He was healthy, respected by friends, and financially steady. He had built his life back from nothing into something real and his own. He had gotten through the pain, the hard battle in court, and all the stress without losing his self-respect. The sun began to rise, spilling warm gold light across the city's tall glass buildings. The light touched his face. He took a slow sip of his coffee. He thought about the fire pit in his old backyard, the flames burning what had been a story full of lies. He thought about Chad working hard. carrying heavy bags outside and about Lanny, trapped by her own quiet sadness. Mike felt a deep peace inside. He knew the best way to move on wasn't to hurt her back. It was to forget her completely. As Mike takes his last calm sip of coffee, watching the sun rise over the life he made with his own hands, it shows us that real strength comes not from anger, but from the quiet courage to keep going. If you like Mike's story about facing hurt and finding his way to heal, please subscribe to the Infidelity Director channel for more stories about hope and moving on. What do you think about Mike's choice to simply delete the pictures and walk away without looking back? Thank you very much for watching and spending time with us today. Remember, no matter how hard things get, you always have the power to start again and build a life that is even stronger than before.